For example, if we were to strip away all of the societal pressure that is put on people in general, but especially women, to couple up, to get married, to settle down, if we lived in a society that really did not give a damn, whether or not you were single, whether or not you were a couple, that didn't judge you for being single, would people really be so eager to couple up? If you knew that there was no judgment, because let's be real, so many people get married and settle down simply because they don't want to be judged for being single. And we know people be judging you heavy and hard. As someone who's been single quite a bit, especially recently, I've been single for a while, but through my adulthood, anytime I was single, my God, what do you mean you're single? What? A pretty girl like you? Single? What's wrong with you? I mean, my God. The judgment that you get. So if we stripped away that judgment, that societal judgment that is instilled in us by the patriarchal system that benefits from all of us coupling up. And, I can explain that in another episode of how they benefit from us coupling up and why they want people to focus on romantic love as opposed to, for example, community love. That's for a different topic. We'll talk about that another day. But if we took out that pressure, would people really be so eager? If we stripped away the concept of the biological clock ticking over every woman's head, which, by the way, the biological clock is bullshit. It was invented by the predominantly male American Medical Association. Geriatric pregnancies at 35. Come on, sit the hell down. And of course, now we know with more research that women are comfortably having healthy, happy children well into their 40s and even into their 50s, and some bitches even popping babies out in their 60s. But the patriarchy tells women that we have this biological clock ticking over our head. By 35, you got to have that baby. But if we stripped away that biological clock, would women be rushing into these relationships and marriages? What would be left? What would the appeal of coupling up be if we stripped that away? What about if we stripped away the childhood conditioning of Disney movies and rom-coms and the romantic love, finding our Prince Charming? I mean, my God, they shoved that stuff down our throats as kids. It's so wild. Waiting for your Prince Charming. If we stripped away that conditioning and that brainwashing that we are supposed to be seeking romantic love, that's just what you do, right? And every girl is dreaming of her wedding. If we strip that away, what would be left? If we had community, real community, healthy community, and less loneliness in the world, would people still be as motivated to pursue romantic love? Because loneliness is another major reason why people jump into relationships, because they don't want to be alone. They're scared to be alone. They don't like to be with their own thoughts. They're lonely. And loneliness is a trippy emotion, because this is another part of my existential crisis. I have been lucky enough to be able to afford to live by myself my whole entire adult life since I left my parents' house, right? And, when I was younger, especially like in my early 20s and stuff, when I was living by myself, my God, I would be so lonely. And then as the years went on, I was like, actually living alone is pretty lit. I love it. I love not having to deal with people. I love being in my own space. I love being able to do whatever the hell I want to do. I love that when I put a dish down in one place, it's going to be in that same place when I come back. And I love it. I love the peace of mind. And when I started embracing living by myself and being single whenever I would be single, whenever I started embracing that, I was like, yo, this shit is kind of tight. I fucks with it. And it really made me question, like, what was I lonely about before? And like, what does loneliness really mean? Like, is it even a real emotion? Or is it something that we've been programmed to believe that if you're alone, then eventually you're gonna be lonely? Because for the last few years, really it hit me during the pandemic when we were locked in the houses, couldn't go nowhere, do anything. I was like, I'm having a great time. That was my wake-up call. I was like, what is loneliness? How have I been locked in my house for 2-3 years, can barely do anything, talk to anybody, and I don't feel it at all? But when I was in my 20s, I was lonely all the time. That's something that needs to be examined, this concept of loneliness, because we should be able to be in our own presence and feel comfortable. And, loneliness to me really arises from a fear of being alone and being with self. It's very similar to those people, who can never sit down. They can never sit still. They always got to be up doing something, driving around town, got to do errands in their house. They don't sit down. They're cleaning, they're cooking, because they can't sit with themselves. So if we reassessed our relationship with loneliness, and if we had healthy community relationships, would we still be running into relationships so we weren't alone? Because for me, when I strip all of that stuff away, when I strip away the societal pressure, once I got comfortable with people judging me for being single, like I literally do not give a fuck anymore. Once I got comfortable with that, it's like, I don't care. I'm not looking for love, really. Once I got comfortable with being lonely or being at home by myself, once I stopped being worried about this biological clock, it's like the luster of settling down in a relationship really went away. And when I took those patriarchy beer goggles off and I started looking at the dudes around me that I would be like seeking relationships with, I was like, God damn, these motherfuckers are creatures from the deep. That's my mom's favorite. My mom is so horrible. Anytime I would bring a guy or show her a guy that I was interested in, if she thought he was ugly, she'd be like, oh, he's a creature from the deep. She's horrible. My mom's one of those people who's been beautiful for her whole life and never had an awkward phase, so she just doesn't get it, But yeah, you look at these dudes and you're like, because the truth of the matter is, especially for women, we be lowering our standards so goddamn low just so that we can be in a relationship, so we can say we got a man, so we don't have to be, quote, lonely, so that we can pop that baby out because everybody else is doing it. That's another thing, the societal pressure. Everybody else is doing it, keeping up with the Joneses. How many people settle down in relationships and get married just because everybody else was? You talk to boomers and older people, and that is exactly what they'll tell you is the reason why they got married. I asked my mom, she was like, well, everybody else was. Got to keep up with them. And because of those motivations that are not genuine motivations for relationship, we're not actually seeking relationship, we're not seeking compatibility and companionship, we're doing it out of fear. We're doing it out of fear of being alone, fear of that biological clock, fear of judgment, fear that, we're not like everybody else. We should be seeking these romantic relationships. And so women especially, we lower our standards. When I think back, on some of the dudes, honestly, the vast majority of the guys that I have been with in my adult years, even in my teenage years, if I had the mentality that I have today of seeing through the patriarchal veil and the bullshit, I would have never given any of those motherfuckers a chance. Honestly, I can maybe think of 2 or 3 dudes that I would still have given a shot to. The rest of them should have never come near me with a 10-foot pole. But the reason I dealt with them was because my motivation was all of the wrong reasons. I was keeping up with the Joneses. All my friends had men, so I had to get one too. I had to go to the man store and pick one up.